Lots of stories of Fergie, who'd started off as actually a rather sweet girl, very excited to be a member of the royal family, suddenly becoming very imperious and bossy.
Behind the heavy doors of the royal household, there is a version of Sarah Ferguson the cameras never captured. According to reports from those who stood just feet away, it wasn't the scandals that kept the staff on edge. It was a quiet, repetitive habit that happened every single morning. Allegedly, it began with a tray of food and ended with a scene so unsettling it left seasoned professionals in total silence. According to accounts, this wasn't just a quirk, it was the first sign of a much deeper unpredictability that reportedly transformed the entire atmosphere of the room in seconds. But while the public saw a vibrant personality, the people in the shadows were watching a pattern that suggested something else entirely was going on. And as the behavior grew more frequent, a disturbing question began to surface. What exactly were they witnessing?
But yeah, there are innumerable stories of just how badly they treated staff. They would get, for example, police officers to take the rap on traffic offences, just being very unpleasant to them.
Inside the royal residence, the silence of the morning was reportedly shattered by something far more unsettling than a raised voice. According to those tasked with serving her, Sarah Ferguson's daily routine didn't start with a greeting or a plan for the day. Allegedly, it began with a plate of food and a series of movements that left the staff completely frozen. The breakfast tray would be placed with mathematical precision, just as the protocols demanded. But as soon as the door closed, the atmosphere allegedly shifted from royal dignity to something far more erratic. Staff members have reportedly described watching in total silence as she began to systematically dismantle her meal. According to accounts from the household, she didn't use a fork or a knife. Allegedly, she would use her bare hands to crush, mix, and obsessively rearrange every item on the plate into a heap of unrecognizable debris.
Insisting on staff cooking meals and then actually last minute deciding to go out to a restaurant. The stories of different meals being wanting to be cooked, so they had a choice at Sunninghill and then decided to eat kettle crisps. Huge expenditure on food and wine that wasn't eaten, bottles that were opened and not drunk. Just wastefulness, I think, which upset a lot of people.
The intensity in the room was palpable, as if she were focused on a task far more important than eating. But here is the part that reportedly haunted the staff the most. After all that deliberate, intense effort to break the food apart, she would allegedly push the plate away without taking a single bite. This wasn't an isolated incident or a bad morning. Allegedly, it happened again the next day, and the day after that. According to those in the room, it became a chilling, silent ritual that signaled something was deeply wrong behind the public smile. But as the staff whispered about these strange morning habits, they soon realized the food was just a symptom of a much larger, more volatile pattern. Because according to these accounts, when the breakfast ritual ended, a much more unpredictable energy was about to take over the entire household. Working for Sarah Ferguson allegedly meant living in a state of constant high-alert survival. According to accounts from those inside the household, the strange breakfast ritual was merely the opening act for a day defined by total psychological glasswalking. Allegedly, the atmosphere could flip from sunshine to a thunderstorm in the blink of an eye, leaving staff members wondering which version of her they were about to face. There were mornings when everything felt calm and professional, only for a sudden, unexplained shift in energy to take over the room. Staff have reportedly described moments where the tension would build without any warning at all. According to some who were there, voices would be raised over the smallest, most insignificant details, creating a pressure cooker environment that felt impossible to escape. Allegedly, it wasn't just about what was said, it was the heavy, unpredictable silence that followed. This volatility forced everyone around her to become expert observers, constantly scanning for the slightest change in her mood before they dared to speak. But according to these internal accounts, the most unsettling part wasn't the outbursts themselves, it was how quickly the air would go cold afterward. Allegedly, she could go from an intense escalation back to total, eerie quiet in a matter of seconds, leaving the people around her emotionally whiplashed. This created a culture of polite fear, where the staff felt they had to curate every word and every movement just to stay under the radar. But as these moments of high tension became the new normal, the secrets started to leak out beyond the palace walls. Because according to those in the inner circle, this wasn't just a personality trait, it was a pattern that began to reveal a much darker side of life behind the scenes. The silence inside the household was reportedly never just about tradition. It was allegedly a strategic shield for a reality that was spiraling out of control. According to accounts from those who lived through it, the unpredictable atmosphere wasn't just a mood. Allegedly, it was a symptom of a lifestyle reaching a breaking point. While the public saw a resilient survivor, the people behind the scenes were reportedly witnessing the heavy toll of a woman struggling to maintain a standard that was slipping through her fingers. According to reports, the tension among the staff was fueled by the knowledge that one wrong move could trigger a confrontation in an environment already stretched thin. According to those in the inner circle, the secrecy wasn't just about protecting a reputation, it was reportedly about survival. Allegedly, during the periods where this behavior was at its peak, there were whispered concerns about her judgment and the people she was reportedly turning to for support. The food ritual and the sudden mood shifts were just the tip of the iceberg, masking a life that was allegedly becoming increasingly unstable. Staff have reportedly hinted that the atmosphere became so thick with pressure that the staff felt they were walking on a knife's edge every single day. But as the pressure from the institution intensified, the wall of silence reportedly began to crack. According to accounts, the friction behind the scenes wasn't just about property or titles, it was reportedly the result of years of behavior that had allegedly left the household staff exhausted. Allegedly, the intervention became necessary because the patterns had become too disruptive to ignore any longer. The Houdini of the family was finally running out of ways to hide the truth, and the reality of what happened behind those closed doors was about to become impossible to contain. And according to those watching from the shadows, the most shocking revelation wasn't what was happening in the kitchen, it was the reports of who she was allegedly reaching out to as the doors began to close. The most disturbing part of the story isn't the behavior itself, but the desperate lengths taken to keep it hidden from the rest of the world. According to reports, the walls of the Royal Lodge weren't just made of stone, they were made of a silence that was allegedly starting to rot from the inside. Allegedly, as the financial pressure on the household reached a fever pitch, the unpredictability the staff feared reportedly took on a new, more frantic energy. According to accounts from those in the inner circle, Sarah was allegedly looking for a way out of her mounting debts, and some reports suggest she was turning to increasingly controversial figures for a lifeline. Staff have reportedly hinted that phone calls were being made at odd hours to individuals who had no business being connected to the royal fold. The atmosphere became even more claustrophobic as the staff realized that the person they were serving was allegedly operating on a completely different set of rules. The food ritual and the mood shifts were no longer just quirks. They were reportedly the outward signs of a woman who felt the world closing in on her. There were moments where the mask would slip entirely, revealing a level of panic that reportedly left her assistants genuinely concerned for what might happen next. But according to these insiders, the real crisis was brewing in the hallways of the palace itself. High-ranking officials were receiving reports about the instability at the lodge and were quietly preparing for a total fallout. It wasn't a matter of if the situation would explode, but when. Allegedly, the tension between her private reality and her public persona had become a liability that the institution could no longer afford to protect. The decision-makers were already moving the pieces on the board to ensure that when the crash came, she would be the only one left in the wreckage. And according to those who saw the final warnings, the truth about her health was about to become the ultimate weapon in the fight for her future. The mask didn't just slip. For those watching closely, it shattered entirely when her health and status finally collided. The bubbly, resilient image Sarah Ferguson presents to the public is allegedly a world away from the woman retreating into the shadows of Royal Lodge. Behind those doors, her health battles were more than just physical struggles. They reportedly served as the ultimate justification to keep her hidden. As she fought these private battles, the behaviors staff had witnessed for years grew even more pronounced, creating a cycle of isolation that left her more vulnerable than ever. Insiders suggest the true tragedy wasn't the loss of her titles, but the erosion of her voice within the system. She became a figure living in a state of royal limbo, too high profile to be ignored, yet too volatile to be trusted. Even as she shared her journey with the public, whispers persisted that the official narrative was missing its most critical chapters. These strange habits and sudden mood shifts were perhaps the only ways she could exert control in a world that was slowly erasing her presence. The silence at the lodge is now heavier than ever. The people who once stood in that room, watching her dismantle her breakfast in total silence, remain bound by a code of discretion that keeps the most unsettling details buried. There are rumors of diaries and internal memos that have never seen the light of day, documents that paint a much darker picture of her final years in the royal fold. For those who know the truth, the Duchess of Doom headlines only scratch the surface of a much deeper, more personal collapse. Because for the people who were actually there, the most haunting part of this story isn't the scandals we already know. It's the one secret they are still terrified to tell. What's even more chilling is that Sarah's story might be just one chapter in a much larger, hidden history of the household. If these patterns were happening right under the noses of the world's most elite security, you have to wonder what else has been kept in the shadows. Is this a case of a woman struggling under impossible pressure, or is there a side to the royal system that we aren't supposed to understand? The truth usually hides in the details no one wants to talk about. But now that these accounts are starting to surface, the silence is finally breaking. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications.